from seeing the movie Arrival, and I have to say without any exaggeration that that was one of the most enlightening movie experiences of my life. Incredibly profound. So I warn you, I'm going to get into spoilers about the movie. So if you haven't seen it, you may not want to watch this video until you have seen it. And I really, truly, with utmost enthusiasm, encourage you to see this movie, especially if you are one who is involved or interested in spirituality, consciousness, and unity on our planet. This movie is very, very profound. Geez, where to begin? This movie is really a sign of our times, and it's amazing because there's so many movies like Doctor Strange. I posted a big write-up about Doctor Strange and how important this movie is because it's revealing and talking so openly about the mystic arts, which is so important right now for our graduation as a human species into realizing what is our essential identity, and the anthropos, the human genome, the essential template that a lot of these ancient cultures say we need to reveal for us to really live these incredible, excellent lives. In Arrival, there is so much about Arrival that makes it amazing is it's making a case for the fact that we are on the precipice of realizing something that's going to unite us all. At the end of the movie, the protagonist, Louise, played by Amy Adams, she figures out this universal language that is actually bestowed on them by this alien force who much of humanity who's in a fear state sees as an adversary, as an enemy, as the other, which is such a theme in our civilization right now with all the hate that we're being programmed into looking at through the Trump election and all the xenophobia that's come out. It's coming out because it's asking us to really look at this divisiveness that is at the root of our civilization right now, and we have to process that fear. We have to get to a place where we find unity if we're going to really survive as a species, because we have a unified challenge before us with the environmental crisis. And this is something I alluded to in my first talk about a spiritual revolution, how it's so important to realize that spirituality is not a religion. Spirituality is just the way things are. And in this movie, these aliens who are striking this menacing figure to everyone on the planet, because there's these 12 alien ships, these shells, and I love how the director of this and the writer of the movie portrays them as sort of playing on our notions of evil. You know, the ships are black and the aliens themselves have, you know, these monstrous kind of tentacles, and they look like something we've been trained to hate. And yet near the end of the movie, the sort of climax turning point is the aliens are describing that the weapon is not a weapon, it's a tool. They're trying to make us understand. They're here to help us, to give us a gift. And that gift is to understand that time is non-linear. And that isn't the ultimate truth. But what it's showing is that time being non-linear is one of the tenets of the metaphysical, spiritual, mystical insight, that we live in a quantum world where time is much more mysterious than we would like to believe. And that thinking of things in terms of linearity, that things are separated with that line, black and white. I think it was Picasso who said that lines are considered blasphemous to God. Because if you really become tuned into what is authentic religion and spirituality, you realize that everything is just a waveform, like the yin-yang symbol. And then you have the yin-yang, they're interdependent and interconnected. You have a bit in each one of them. There's a bit of the black and there's a bit of the darkness and the light in either one, showing that there's no absolute linear difference. Everything's kind of non-linear. Everything's kind of flow and spiraling, actually. Spiral dynamics of evolution. And this universal language that Luis eventually becomes the messenger of, the decoder of, the language is literally shapes that are made more, they're more symbolic. They look kind of vibrational, and what they're trying to say is that the universal language of quantum physics is really the key for us to realize that we are all unified through vibration. And after the movie, it was quite extraordinary. I went there with a group of friends, and we talked to two other moviegoers coming out, and the six of us just all of a sudden were just enthusiastically opening up this portal of it felt like enlightenment. And one of the insights I realized through another friend's point was that this quantum reality, I mean, and I've read lots of books about quantum science, but the quantum mind, the ability to apprehend things on a vibrational level, and is instinctual actually in our humanity. When we actually wipe away the murk around our soul, as William Blake alluded to in his famous line, we actually see things as they really are, which is infinite, which is nonlinear, which is multidimensional. And this is actually instinctual. We don't necessarily need to study science. We know this through feeling. And that's why it's remarkable. At the end of the movie, Louise turns to Ian, who is becoming her love, and says, if you could see your whole life before you, if you knew the beginning all the way to the end, would you change anything? And Ian says something that at first glance seems very mundane, but it's actually a huge insight as well into the revealing of this universal truth, universality, which we need to come to as a human species. He says, well, I think maybe I'd express more about what I feel. And that's so key. Out of all the truths that he could have said to change, that's the one key point that he focuses on. And what I think the movie makers were trying to say was that there's something very profound about feeling, because feeling takes us more into our instinct. Feeling is about the heart, and part of the revolution we're realizing now is we're taking the intellect, the supremacy of the intellect. So we've been a species, thanks to Descartes, I think therefore I am, but we're realizing, no, wait, the heart actually has an electromagnetic field 3,000 times bigger than the actual brain. So the mind is actually more in the heart, and the heart has this field extends about 10 meters around us. And that's why the Taoists called the heart the master of vibrations. It feels things before the brain does. And the brain and the intellect is more analytical, which is a part of how we render ourselves human. But the heart has this incredible supreme intelligence based on feeling. And that's why Barbara Handclough, the great writer, said that feeling is the way that we actually open ourselves up to understanding multidimensionality. So multidimensionality is very important because we're starting to realize that there's so many dimensions to our reality, and that's where paradox becomes truth if you actually begin to live in this multiverse kind of way. And in one of the conversations after the movie, we were talking about what some people call the archons, or this celestial adversary that is in our collective consciousness, this idea that there's a devil working or some kind of evil force that's been tampering with our consciousness. This is actually shamanic insight, that there's a predatory race in our reality that's tampering and manipulating us. And we talked about that, about, you know, how we've been trained and programmed to see this as something evil, and yet maybe this isn't, these challenges, these adversaries in our life aren't necessarily evil, but they're initiating us through a very profound, tough experience into a whole new level of looking at reality. So that reveals a multidimensionality to itself, because on one level there is an evilness that's at work in our humanity, but on another dimension there's also a teaching in that. And the paradox is both of those things are true at the same time. A particle is also a wave, which is a scientific fact now that we know that matter is also energy, and they can both coexist at the same time. So when we start to understand that paradoxical truth about the universe, it opens up a huge key to understanding our reality when we allow ourselves to expand the bandwidth of our consciousness, which we're doing a lot right now on our planet. Right now, the dark or evil forces are trying to trigger us to maintain this dualistic state. They're trying to program and press every button of fear that they've conditioned us to feel since we were born. Fear of the other, fear of the bigot, fear of the racist. All these things were being triggered so that we maybe start a final absolute war and just annihilate each other. And you see this as well in the film Arrival. You see this fear-based mentality when you're stuck in that very limited bandwidth. Of course you actually feel afraid because there's a part of you that is in unknowing, that is in ignorance. And our culture doesn't truly admire ignorance as actually mystery. So we've been trained to feel that when we don't know something, we fear it. We see it as the other, and we make it a caricature of some kind of evil thing that we must resist or even go to war with. Whereas if you look at a lot of mystical cultures who had a lot more exploration into consciousness, whether it's through shamanic medicines like ayahuasca, psilocybin, they had experiences revealing these veils, lifting the veils to see this multidimensional grander sense of reality. And so they weren't necessarily afraid anymore of those mysteries. They became comfortable in a not knowing, and also comfortable because in a not knowing, the not knowing multidimensionally means there is a potential for knowing. So the great adventure of curiosity, of life, which is really the essence of what we are supposed to be as human beings. We are here on this planet that the ancients called the goddess Sophia, which means wisdom. We're here to be gardeners of wisdom. We're here to harvest wisdom, to cultivate wisdom, to just learn and actually enjoy and be in pleasure. That is actually the true way of the universe that we're meant to follow. That is our evolutionary path. And yet we've been going very wayward on that. And as this beautiful moviegoer shared with me, you know, perhaps that is also part of another grand drama, that we've been taken away from this path, just like the Tower of Babel myth, you know, where we built this great tower to the sky for whatever reason, perhaps arrogance, we want to know as the gods know, and then we fell and we were split into all these different languages, so we couldn't speak in that unified way anymore. But perhaps that whole drama was created so that we come to this point right now on the cusp of a golden age as we leave the Kali Yuga, which is looking at the ages according to the yogis or the Vedas, the Vedic wisdom, which is the 4 quadrants of time, cycles like this. At the end of the Kali Yuga, we then return to the golden age. And perhaps being in that materialistic, dualistic age that we are now, where we're so divisive, the reason for that is to spawn this incredible, indomitable, unstoppable yearning to be one, to be unified, which is why the spiritual revolution is happening. And so many people are feeling it. They are realizing that being vibrational, looking at the world with the quantum mind, the heart, which is accessing the quantum reality, when you start to open that, you literally have a key to the whole universe. You start to see patterns. You start to follow the symbols of your dreams. You start to read the book of nature. You start to realize the guiding realm that the Taoists called it. And then life actually takes on a little more ease because you're actually becoming masterful at reading the game, the Leela, as the yogis call it. You're no longer in this helpless innocence, which of course would spawn fear. But now you're in knowing, and in knowing and in wisdom, we are emboldened and empowered. And that's the essence of our humanity. That's what we're supposed to get to. And so there's a key opening up on the planet right now. As Tesla said, when you understand vibration, you open up all the secrets of the universe, and so many of us are now understanding that. So enlightenment is becoming a tsunami. We are literally seeing the rise of an enlightened culture, and that's going to be a huge part of how this world is saved. As a great, dear, wise friend of mine told me once, she said, but then we let the world save us. Because you see, all the great mystics and the great teachers and the great wise ones, they actually got their incredibly universal, eternal knowledge from where? From the earth. By sitting in the forest and meditating and receiving these downloads, realizing you don't necessarily need to read all these books anymore. That in a state of meditation, the heart becomes, as the Taoist said, a portal, a wellspring to this guiding realm, to this wisdom where you receive, you are instructed by her, the goddess, as the pagan Gnostics said in their high initiate experiences, their shamanic techniques of ecstasy. They received instruction from what they called the living light, which was the goddess. And that is something that we are all accessing now in a tremendous way on the planet. And that is the boon, that is the great jewel of our existence, the great essence of our humanity, is to have access, to become masters ourselves. Our divinity, our divine spark, is remembering our divine spark, and that it's lit and from a divine universe itself. When we see that resonance, all of a sudden we open up a key to understanding everything, really. And everything is an adventure that keeps going and going, because there's always more delights and mysteries to explore. Arrival, I mean, the movie itself, so much more arrives than simply these aliens. It is about the arrival of an enlightened consciousness, a universal language on this planet. That is really the true arrival that this movie is trying to say, and that so many of us are experiencing in our life. So, I am just whirling in this. I'm just going to, probably won't sleep. It's quite late, it's past midnight, but I'm feeling ecstatic about this film. So, go and see it. I hope you have seen it if you're watching this video. And if you have seen it, please comment. Please, let's share these ideas. This is really what's it about now, for us to realize, those of us who are having these experiences of unity consciousness, this universality, the universal being birthed in us. We need to talk and revel with each other, these understandings, which happens, you know, when you go to great conscious music festivals like Burning Man or the Om Festival, and you're among all your kin. It's incredible the conversations you have. It's like we're always just teeming with ecstatic moments because of the resonance just keeps building things. It's quite remarkable. Big love and glory to you all.